Is Facebook violating you? If you follow any sort of news whatsoever, you're probably well aware that Facebook is under the microscope right now. Now, with Zuckerberg being in the courts, the big question comes down to, what are people doing with your Facebook data? And what does that mean for your privacy? Does it mean that just because you have your information on Facebook that no one is allowed to use it or touch it? Or, I mean, that begs a very big question. And what do people do with the data that you post online? Essentially, by going to Facebook or anywhere, you are putting your information in someone else's data warehouse, and we don't always know what's going on with that information. And so, in reality, no matter what you post anywhere, and it's not, say, like on your own personal camera or on your personal computer that's not connected to the internet, and you just never use the internet again. Unless you never use the internet again, there's some way to connect to your data and some way to connect to whatever information you have. And then if it's on a website, then it's owned by someone. Now, they have their infrastructure, and there are laws and regulations around what can people do with private data. They can't legally just do whatever they want with private data. We have things like HIPAA, and in Europe they have something called GDPR, and this is not a topic about compliance, but there are laws around privacy and things that prevent businesses from just doing as they please with your data. And it's also not in the best interest of a business to just sit there and maliciously use data. Otherwise, bad things happen. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world. Corruption's out there, and there are people who are looking to see what juicy bits they can take advantage of. They're there. And therefore, we want to use something called discretion. The more discretion you use, the harder it is for people to target you. And if you make yourself a great big target by just putting out a bunch of juicy bits for a business or someone or an individual or anyone to capitalize on, then they're simply just going to target the easiest individual or thing or crowd or group. Whatever is easiest to target, it will be targeted. Unfortunately, there are still a few caveats to even trying your best to be discreet. Let's talk about that a little bit. Even when we're trying to be discreet, sometimes we might decide that we want to message a person to see if they want to watch a movie or do something. So you might say, "Hey, Gruntilda, what are you up to?" And Gruntilda's like, "Oh, not too much." So you say you want to watch a movie, and so you private message this so that it's not on your wall and it's not on their wall, and you're not trying to broadcast this out to the world or whatever. And maybe it's a much more sensitive subject. And all of a sudden, you get a new message saying, "Hey, here are some show times if you click on this link." That's a little violating feeling. You look at the message, you probably delete it, and so then it kind of makes you wonder what is going on with your data. So it ultimately comes down to just try your best to be discreet about what you're posting. Think about it a little bit. These days people are starting to become more cognizant of don't post something on the internet that you don't want other people to find out about. But you wouldn't post something about, "Hey, I'm at this specific hotel right now." Maybe some people still do stuff like that, and they do. Unfortunately, not everyone thinks about what they're posting in social media. But when you're thinking about something very important and you're having a business discussion or something that needs to be confidential, or you really just want to minimize whatever you're talking about being out there for someone to use or analyze, consider using different channels of communication. You're probably better off making a phone call or just using a text message. With Facebook Messenger, some people use Facebook Messenger just like a text message. Even though in forensics, people can get a hold of your text messages and analyze that for legal purposes and whatnot, that's still not nearly the same and not nearly as invasive as trying to use Facebook for 100% of your communication, for example. So if you're concerned about privacy with Facebook, use it. It's something that's out there as a communication medium. Most people aren't interested in, the fact that you just ate a sandwich unless there's someone who knows you very well. That's not something that someone maliciously coming after you is going to be able to capitalize on. Like, oh, yeah, now I know what sandwich you had for lunch. I'm going to come find that sandwich. Well, being sarcastic, but regardless, use other communication mediums if that's a concern. And then Facebook can be left for things that you're really just not all that worried about sharing to the world. And just use discretion. You don't have to stop using Facebook entirely. Just consider and think about it a little bit. Think before you post. Now, just because that picture of you eating that juicy sandwich wasn't being used for malicious purposes, it might still be used for advertisements. And yes, businesses still do use your data for advertisements oftentimes and whatnot. And their goal is not to be malicious, and sometimes they just want to provide you a service or something that you might actually want. So, whether or not you like it, that trend is there if you are putting your data in someone else's warehouse. So, once again, even discretion might still net you advertisements at the least. Do you think I'm getting better at this? He thinks I'm getting a little better at this, hopefully. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give me a like, or you can also subscribe if you found it extra interesting.